Okay, everyone, welcome. I'm literally fresh out of accepting my badge. Yes, I'm pleased to say I passed my exam. So I am officially a Google Professional Cloud Architect. It's tiring, it was daunting, and my brain is actually fried right now. But I wanted to jump on a quick video here because I want to record the experience while it's still fresh so that I can give you all a complete review of the exam. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. And here's what I do on this channel. On the CyberSec Migrant podcast, we sit down with cybersecurity professionals and leaders, most of whom are immigrants, to unpack real career journeys, the wins, the setbacks, the lessons that nobody puts on their LinkedIn. And on the sister podcast, the CyberSec Migrant Lounge, we zoom out a bit and talk about tech a bit more broadly. So AI, product, startups, and how technology is shaping work and society. I also publish practical career growth and how-to videos breaking down certifications, resumes, interviews, and strategy. And yes, I also review everyday tech through a security and privacy lens, so you know exactly what is protecting your data. So if this is something that is up your alley, consider subscribing to the channel and maybe hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos when they're released. And if you're a returning subscriber and a returning viewer, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And now let's get into it. So if you're currently preparing for the Google Cloud Platform Architect exam, or maybe just thinking about it, this video is for you. I'm going to break down exactly what I did, what resources I used, how long I studied, what the exam actually was like, and a few critical tips that I think helped me to pass on the first try. So let's get into it. Just for a little context, for those who know me, so you know where I'm coming from, I've been in the tech industry for 17, 18 years now. And I spent the last 8 or 9 of those working in cybersecurity specifically. And I've actually only been working with GCP for the last, say, maybe three plus years. So I'm relatively new to GCP. Most of the work I've done is in the identity and access management space. So IAM is my forte. I am Mr. Zero Trust. I believe Zero Trust is the future of security. It's one way to help us make us more secure in the future. And that's something we actually even bring into the cloud, that Zero Trust mentality. But I decided to go for the professional architect certification because of a couple of things. One, the future is the cloud. Everyone is moving their workloads to the cloud. Every company is moving their architecture to the cloud, and people are architecting the entire enterprises on the cloud. So it's going to be important that you've got somebody who knows who has the right know-how to help you do that effectively and efficiently. You don't want to provision in the cloud where you're over provisioning, or you're spending too much money, or your cloud transformation journey is a nightmare. So you need somebody who's knowledgeable, understands what it's like, what it takes to be cloud architect, which is why I went for this. And I know that it's regarded as one of the toughest certifications in the industry. I don't want to take it lightly. It's right up there with the CISSP and the CISM as well. So that's the reason why I took the exam. You might have a different reason for taking it. Let me know down in the comments below what's your reason for taking the Google PCA. Now let's talk about the things that I did, my study, my roadmap, and the resources I used. That's going to be the actual meat of this video. So how did I actually prepare? My study time was about 3.5 months, putting in about 10 hours a week. So I started preparing in October last year. And my study was in three and a half phases. I'll get to the half in a bit. But the first part was a lot of theory. So there was a lot of theory where I was doing a lot of reading on my own. So there was material to read. I actually also was in an instructor-led course. Shout out to Adam. Adam was a fantastic instructor, and Gabby as well. And the instructors actually took us through the main concepts around the Google PCA certification. Everything about the cloud and Kubernetes and deployment managers and the GKE and App Engine and Compute Engine, the whole 9 yards. So that's something that was really, really good. And one thing I actually think is very important. I think if you decide to go self-taught alone, you might struggle with the PCA, especially if you have no experience in the Google cloud space. Because the Google PCA is cloud done in Google's flavor. So you need to understand that. And that's hard to really get if you're just doing self-taught videos or self-taught courses. So if you can, it is my recommendation strongly that you consider an instructor-led course. It's going to make things a lot easier for you as you go along. For example, Google gives you steps as how to approach certain thing. You're told, go to the console, click on this, then click on this, then click on this, then click on that. So you're going to 4, 5, 6 different clicks to get to what you actually want. When I was in class and my instructor was able to say things like, just click here, type in XYZ, and you get exactly what you want. So all those shortcuts, you don't get those shortcuts if you don't go to a class. You don't get them when you just watch a video or self-taught video. So I would strongly encourage you to consider doing a class that's led by an instructor, because it really, really does help. That's a big positive about that. And like I said earlier, there has to be hands-on. So just watching videos alone or even sitting in class alone isn't going to count. So you have to know the GCP console. And I was able to have access to, it used to be called Quick Labs before, but now it's called Skill Boost. And that's Google's own platform where you can actually practice with the Google Cloud platform. So it's a lab environment. There's a bunch of different courses which you can take, and a bunch of learning paths as well. So there's the learning path you have to take to get your PCA, and there's courses within that. And each of those courses has their own individual labs. In those labs, there were labs that did things like VPCs, configuring IAM roles, spinning up GKE clusters, and the whole works, all of that. But there was also a variety of labs. There were basic labs that you'd be done in 30 minutes or 15 minutes. Those were there. There were labs that would take you an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do those as well. But most of the labs were labs where you're given the instructions and you're told to follow a step-by-step process to achieve an outcome. And then you could actually play with the console, use the commands, either in the terminal or use the GUI to actually interact with the Google Cloud platform as well, be it Computer Engine or App Engine or, any of the various storage solutions that Google offers on the cloud. But there were also the challenge labs, and I found those quite challenging and daunting. Well, the name is Challenge Labs after all, but it was very good. Challenge labs are labs where, unlike typical labs where you're given an objective and a set of steps to reach that objective, with a challenge lab, you're given an objective and you're given the lab, but you aren't given instructions on how to achieve that objective. It's left for you to use the knowledge you've learned from that course to achieve that objective. So usually challenge labs were at the very end of each course, or the final course, which was a bunch of 6 different challenge labs to actually get some of that material before you could actually go qualify to write the exam. So it was really, really important. And those challenge labs were really good in testing how well do you know the Google Cloud platform. So if you don't have access, I recommend you try and get access to Skill Boost. There is the option to sign up for free, but you need credits to take some labs, or you can maybe find that through your employer or provider. But Skill Boost was a very, very useful tool to help with. And then also Google does provide some practice exams. So I would recommend strongly that you take some practice exams, some practice questions, because those are really, really important. Because you can't just memorize answers with the PCA. It doesn't work that way. When you get a question wrong on a practice test, you've got to understand why is it wrong, And Google is very good at putting out various documentation that talks about all of these things. There's so much documentation. There's so much there is to learn. Here's a bonus tip for what I did when I was preparing for my PCA exam. I used, of course, AI to make it easy for me. Google has a tool called Notebook LM. Notebook LM is Google's AI and research partner that helps you understand anything. That's the phrase. It's your research and thinking partner, grounded in the information you trust, built with the latest Gemini model. So it's a really useful tool that you can actually use for research. So one of the things that I did was I used a Notebook LM to build out an exam plan for myself. So what are the things I did with Notebook LM? The slides I got from the classroom, I fed those slides into Notebook LM as sources. I also was able to go to Google to download all of the various information documents around the various Google tools, Compute Engine, Kubernetes Engine, Deployment Manager, all of that. So I put in all those sources into my notebook that I was using for this. So sources like all the slides from the classroom across 6-7 weeks of classes, those went into my Notebook LM as a source. I was also able to put in all the various info documents that Google provides for all their products. And Google has information documents on Compute Engine, on Kubernetes Engine, on their secure AI framework, all of that. There's all those guides. So I fed all of those guides in to the Notebook LM as well. Another thing that I fed into Notebook LM was the various case studies that Google uses as part of the training for the Professional Cloud Architect examination. And those case studies are, there's EHR Healthcare, there's Symbol, there's Autostrat Media, and there's Knight Automotive. So I fed all of those case studies into my Notebook LM as well. And what I was able to do was use that Notebook LM and all these sources to generate a study plan for the exam. So he was able to say, okay, I'm planning to take the exam in XYZ number of days. What's the best way to study with an aim to passing the exam? Very well, and then he gave me all these options. I got digests of that. I was able to generate things like flashcards, which I used to study. I was able to generate audio summaries of some of the most important things that I found in the class. For example, I was able to generate audio summaries that talk through the various case studies for the PCA. I was also able to generate audio summaries of all the various type of machine combinations you can have on Compute Engine. And you'll be surprised, Google has over 400 different combinations you can have for machines in the cloud. That's a whole lot. So again, like I said, Google Cloud is a very extensive platform. You're going to need to know a lot. I think the passing score is 70%. So it's a really, really challenging exam. But I was able to use Notebook LM to prepare all of this. And most importantly, I used Notebook LM to generate 3 practice exams. 5 questions for one, 60 for one. There was one that was just 20 questions, but generated this sample questions that I was able to use to practice and prepare for the exam. This is in addition to the practice exam that's available directly from Google as well. There's a few practice exams you can take from Google, which will help you to prepare for the exam. So if you can, and this is a big plus for your preparation if you're preparing for the Google PCA, if you can, use Notebook LM to prepare yourself an exam plan. It's a fantastic experience. Hey CyberSec Migrant listeners, if you're enjoying the show, help us spread the word. Share the CyberSec Migrant podcast with your friends, your colleagues, and your network. It's the best way to help others discover our awesome content and to join the conversation. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and any other place where you get your podcast, so you never miss an episode. And do hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Your support helps us keep bringing you more valuable content, insights, and stories, and all these tips from the world of cybersecurity. And thank you for tuning in. And now, let's get back to today's episode. So let's talk about my experience when I was taking the exam. It was challenging. Like I said, I've been preparing for this since October 2025. I took the exam mid-January 2026. So it took me just over 3 months to prepare for the exam. And the questions aren't just easy questions. Some of them are long. They paint you, they don't just ask you what is Google's object storage service. No, they paragraph long scenarios where you've got to choose the best solution out of 2 or 3 solutions that could technically work in the cloud, but you're looking for the Google recommended way, focusing on cost, security, and reliability. Remember what I said earlier about it being cloud according to Google? Exactly. It's Google's flavor of the cloud. Also, as part of the exam, you will get case study questions. So case study questions that are based off of the case studies that Google has provided as part of that. And in fact, it's a pretty decent portion of the exam. For my exam, about 30% of my exam was case study questions. So that's quite a fair bit. Almost a third of the exam is case study. So what I would advise is don't try to read the case study during the exam. Make sure you've known the case study very well before the exam, so that during the exam, while it's available to you there during the exam, all you need to do is just skim through. You don't need to actually read it too. Because if you try to read it during the exam, you are going to waste too much time. You've only got 2 hours to answer 60 questions. You don't want to spend 15 minutes of that 2 hours just trying to read and understand what the case studies are talking about. So make sure you know the case studies very well, even before you go into the exam. And then you just scan them during the exam to refresh your memory before you start the test or during the test. And that will really, really go a long way in making it very important for you. So what are my top tips for success? If I had to give you my 3 top takeaways to ensure that you pass the Google PCA, what I'm going to say is the first thing is you've got to think cloud native. If a question asks you, how do you migrate a legacy app? The answer is not always going to be lift and shift to compute engine. No, it's probably going to be an answer that's going to involve modernizing with containers and GKE, or maybe serverless using Cloud Run, or maybe a managed database solution like Cloud Spanner or Cloud SQL. But you've got to know. You've got to also know the difference. When do you use Bigtable? When do you use BigQuery? When do you use Cloud SQL? When is Cloud SQL a better option than Spanner? Or when is Spanner just the only solution you have? Because there's different tools that are useful in different scenarios, and you've got to really understand those scenarios. But most importantly, like I said, you've got to think cloud native. You've got to think of it cloud first, not I'm going to do this partially in the cloud and the rest is going to be on-prem. No, you've got to think of everything running in the cloud. So it's very important that you think cloud native to get into the right frame of mind for this exam. Second tip I'm going to say is you need to understand things like IAM and networking in great detail. You also need to know how things like shared VPCs work, how interconnects work, and the nuances of service accounts, because those topics were everywhere on the exam. I was surprised to see how many questions there appeared on interconnect and peering and cloud VPN, because those topics were everywhere. So you really need to understand that. There was also topics on who has access to what, how do you restrict access from one group within a project, within an organization, within a folder, all of those levels of accesses. You've got to know exactly where to apply those restrictions on accesses. So understanding IAM roles, understanding networking, understanding service account was really, really important. Understanding how networks talk to each other, that was also very important as well. So if you don't know a lot of that, I would advise that you try to do a bit of that, because it's going to be quite important. And I think the third thing, and probably the most important thing, is going to be time management. Don't waste your time on a question for more than 2 minutes. Again, you've got 120 minutes to answer 60 questions. You want to be able to answer as many questions as you can in time so that you have some time for review at the end. I think when I finished my 60 questions, I had about 25 minutes to spare. And while I was answering, I had marked questions. So remember what I said earlier about don't waste time on one question. If your question is being too difficult, flag it for review and move it on. You can actually go back and review the questions, not like some other exams. You can go back and review the question before you submit. So don't let one hard question ruin your timing. Mark it for review, and at the end of the exam, when you've answered all the questions and you have some time left, then you can review and be sure you've got the answer correct or not. I marked several questions for review, and I ended up changing maybe only 2 answers. The rest were, I stuck with my answers and I passed. So the PC exam is tough. It's challenging, but it's absolutely possible if you have a structured plan. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So you've got to plan for how you are going to successfully take the Google Professional Cloud Architect exam, because it's a great feeling when you see a pass on the screen. So if you're studying right now, let me know, comment down below. When is your exam date? What are you planning? What do you find most challenging or most exciting? I would love to cheer you on. And if this video helped you, hit that like button. It really, really helps the channel. Thank you for watching, and if you made it this far, consider watching this video where I talk about my experience taking the CISSP exam, or you can watch this video where I talk about my experience when I took my CISM exam. And I will be rooting for you as you prepare for your exam, and good luck on it, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.